Well, hello everybody. We are here for a brand new series, and we're going to be restoring this Atwater Kent Model 854. So I'm just going to do a brief introductory video to show you what's going on, what it's all about, and then we'll start to dig in over the coming days and weeks. So this is an 854, but there's a little bit of an interesting history here. You'll see here I have a schematic and a tube layout and a chassis layout. The schematic is right here, and we'll go through that in more detail as we move along. Here's the cabinet that came with it, and you'll see the cabinet's in fairly decent shape. It's got some nice burled veneer on it, but one interesting thing about this is you'll see that the theme tag says Atwater Kent 944. The 944 model was a cathedral radio, and I have to assume that when they put this radio on the production line, someone put the wrong label on it, because the square model that you're looking at here, or the rectangular model, is definitely not a 944. So I have to imagine that someone goofed when they were manufacturing this thing. But you'll see it's in good shape. There's some nice brass pieces there, and the paint looks really good. I'm not going to have to do much to this cabinet at all to restore it. Looks really good. I mean, I think I'm going to leave it just the way it is. But that's the cabinet. We've got more work to do though on the actual chassis. So let's take a look at the chassis. So the history on this one is I got this about 2 years ago, and when I got it, every wire that was underneath the chassis looked like this. See this wire right here? This is when they first started to use rubber coated wires. In other words, they got away from the cloth wires, and as all of you that restore radios know, they just didn't work right. So this is kind of what everything looked like underneath the chassis. So that forced me to make a decision to do a rip out 2 years ago, and I did that. And before I show you what underneath looks like, I've cleaned the tuner. I've rewired the bulb and the socket, and I've got all that done, and this thing is greased properly. It works well. The transformer I had to take apart and install new wires. The wires were cracked, there was insulation missing, that kind of thing. While I had it open 2 years ago, I ohmed it out and it worked. This is the on-off switch and volume, and I had to do some repairs on this. The cover that was here originally was gone. I had to make my own new cover and glue it in, and I've rewired it and all that stuff. So I got pretty far on this thing. This is the tone control, and this thing was completely locked when I got it. It works well now. And if you saw my other video, you know that when I started working on this, I didn't realize that you can improvise. It's the second radio I worked on, so I thought, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't read a schematic correctly, so I'm going to put everything back exactly where it was, and that, to me, that was a mistake. And you'll see here in some detail, I mean, this is just a mess, right? This is not neat work at all. Crappy soldering. I didn't really know how to solder well when I did this, and you know, I look at this here and say, okay, that's not a good job at all. And if you look around, there's another really bad solder job that I did, and you know, I've got that all over the place. So so I've decided what I'm going to do is rip everything out of here. So I'm going to take everything out, and I'm going to start over from scratch, and I'm going to redo this thing from the beginning, and I'm going to make sure that I pay close attention this time to improvising, because that's really what this is about. One interesting thing that you may want to see on this thing is this brown wire here. It goes all the way over here. It's actually a wire that's a resistor. It's a 355 ohm resistor. Okay, why they would use that on a wire, I don't know. And it really just goes to the filter caps right here, and it comes over here and goes to ground at some point. Not sure why they would use a wire like that, but maybe there was no such thing as a 355 ohm resistor. I really don't know. So I'm going to have to think about if I want to reuse that or just put a regular resistor in there, 350 ohms or something. I don't know yet. We'll see when we get there. We'll take our time. here's some of the original components. So we've got a couple of resistors here, a couple of wax caps. There's another resistor right there. And if you look at the diagram, that's the resistors right here we're talking about. So you've got a 1500K, you've got a 1500K again, you've got a 0.1 and a 0.05. And then you've got the 33.3K right there. So that's the stuff I just showed you. This diagram is good because it kind of shows you, in theory, all the components that are underneath the chassis. And it's got this wire that I showed you. This is the 355 ohm brown wire that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So it shows that clearly. And then there's a yellow 1 ohm wire that goes to the on-off switch power switch. And then it's got a number of terminal blocks and that kind of thing, which I'll replace with terminal strips, and I'll mount them underneath the chassis. And then if you look at the top, you'll see it's got an 80 rectifier tube, a 2-way 5. It's got a 57, which is the second detector. It's got a 57, which is the first detector. And then I've got my coils and that kind of thing. Nothing really crazy on here. I've got the 4 microfarad cap, filter cap. Then I've got the 8. And here's the speaker plug. And I've got a really good speaker that's in great shape, which I'll install in this one when I'm ready. And that's kind of what that looks like. Let's take a look at the schematic for a minute. So this is really a simple radio. There's really not a lot to this, but we're gonna take our time, right? So here's your transformer, all right, and you've got they call it brown rubber. That's your 5-volt rail, and then you've got your green, right, which is connecting to the rectifier. And then you've got your red, which is 2.5 volts, okay, and that goes to your dial light, etc., etc., etc. You've got your field coil, you've got your speaker right here, right? Nothing really crazy. Here's the flexible resistor that I showed you earlier. Again, not sure why it's there, but we'll get to that, I'm sure. And there's your 2-way 5 right there. There's your 57 detector, and there's your first detector. Again, nothing really crazy on this. So that's what I'm going to undertake. I'm not going to obviously film changing every wire. That's boring. I got some really good feedback from everybody on that, so I appreciate it. I'm going to, rip out the bottom and show you what it looks like. And then we'll start to kind of do what John did. We'll work in sections, and we'll get all the sections put in. And I'll give you brief updates on this thing. And the year on this thing, by the way, is 1935, in case you're wondering. That's an Atwater Kent again from 1935. And that's kind of what we're going to do. So the next time you see the radio, this bottom will be relatively empty. Of course, I'll still have the transformer wires here, which have been changed, but I'll have them all disconnected. I now have the Hacko desolderer gun, so that'll make this really easy. When I did this, I didn't. It was a real pain to get all the solder off of these things. And I'll have all the wires out, I'll have the transformers out, I'll have the coil wires just hanging, getting ready to install them at a future time. Of course, I'll have to test everything again. I'll test the transformer, I'll test the coils, make sure that they're still good. I can't imagine they're not, but you always got to test things before you put them back in. That's what John tells us. Back then, I did get a replacement dial, so that's right here. And of course, it looks really good. I did the rivets myself and riveted it to this metal plate. So that's the dial. And I've got 3 knobs here, which go with it. They don't match, but I'll be able to work through that. And then I've got my my tube set up here. And when I worked on this, I didn't have a tube tester. So I'm gonna pull out my night tube tester and test all these. Looks like someone did this with a tester, and that's the rectifier tube. And here's the 57 RCA, and again the volumes. Yeah, that's right there. And the 2A5 right there. There's the other 2A5, the detector. And then I've got some other tubes in here, 57 and another 57, which have grid caps. So again, you know, we're gonna get this thing back up and running. It's a really nice radio. You know, I don't have any Tombstone radios, which is what this is really. I have old Cathedral, like my Philco that I restored the first one I did actually. So looking forward to having this Tombstone radio working. And one more thing I'll show you before we wrap. So these are the tube covers. They had foil which was falling off. I actually re-foiled these with tin foil 2 years ago. And this is where a grid cap goes in. And there's a solder joint on these things, which I'll have to make sure is connected to this foil. And there's one more right here. Same story. So I put aluminum foil on it, and you know, it'll be a good shield for these things. So so that's where we are. So this is episode 1. I will get busy tomorrow ripping the bottom of this thing out, and then we'll start the process of putting it back together. All right. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, and leave any comments. Thanks, everybody. This is Ron.